Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to do a requested video, and I'm totally cool with that. So the pumpkin was printed from a website called www.coloring-pages.info. So that's where this came from. I don't know the particular artist, but that's where I got it, just to, give credit where it's due. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do now is use my light box to trace this onto some watercolor paper. And I would highly recommend, if you don't have a printer that can handle watercolor paper, this is a very good solution. Now, the light boxes can be a little pricey, but they are more than worth the investment. I think the one I have is very large, so I paid about $70 because it's really big. But the smaller ones that are like this size, they're not that expensive. I mean, you can get one for under 50 bucks. So, it's totally worth it. So I'm going to use some of these Micron brush pens that I bought. I love using Micron pens because they are water resistant and or waterproof, and they come in tips like that. I don't know if you can see that, but how small that is. Okay, that is, I believe, a 03. Which is pretty small. And then you have these ones which are like this, with the brush, and I love them. I'm so in love with this. It's unbelievable, and it comes in colors, and it's just fantastic. So that when you trace this onto the watercolor paper, it won't bleed. So let's get that done, and then I will be back. have several of these, as you can see, and I absolutely love them. Just to briefly mention them, this one was it was like around $10-15, and this was a little more, but I mean, it's absolutely 100% worth it. So I have these two just in case I need extra. They're really great because they don't stain. They come clean with almost everything you could throw at it. So they are definitely worth the investment. To briefly talk about supplies a little bit. This is another thing I would highly recommend, because it has two wells, one of which can be your clean side and the other can be your dirty side. And by that I mean, let me grab one of my brushes here, whoops, which I just knocked on the floor. Okay, and you have this side which has, like, I don't know if you can see it, but the little ridges here, that helps clean the brush, and so do these two sides. So you can pick whichever side you want to be your clean side and the other to be your dirty side. I recommend that, and if you don't have this, or can't get it, you can just use a couple of glass jars. It doesn't have to be this, but I mean, you can see that has holes for the paint brushes. It has a handle. It has it has a top part that goes on top of it. That's what I was looking for. And as you can see, this has been well used. And this goes on the top as a lid. Isn't that fantastic? So, now, the first thing you need to do, excuse me, is when you paint, or when you go to do your watercolor, if you have a single page, you want to use painter's tape. Now this is frog tape, which I highly recommend. You can get it at any, like, Home Depot or Walmart. Fantastic for acrylic, watercolor. You can see it really does live up to its name, so to speak. So you just want to take your tape, and the thing is, what's going to matter where you place your tape is how much do you want the picture to be covered up, like the background or whatever. And in this case, like on the sides, I don't have a lot of room. I should have printed that out a little bit smaller, but I wanted it to be big enough for everybody to see what I was doing. So, that's kind of something to consider. Also, real quickly, before I get to the taping part, I want to discuss something real quickly. Paper. So, this is pulp-based watercolor paper. It's cheaper. It's good for beginners and intermediate watercolorists. I wouldn't really recommend it for advanced artists unless you're just goofing off and playing around and experimenting. Pulp paper, while cheaper, does have its drawbacks. One of which is that it tends to deteriorate a little bit faster. Also, it's not as absorbent. 100% cotton paper absorbs and can take more before it fills up and starts, becoming a deteriorated mess. So that's just my food for thought. It's cold pressed, which is better for when you're doing, like, say, wet on wet, which I'm going to show you, and things of that sort. Hot pressed is good because it's very smooth, almost like Bristol or cardstock. It's very smooth, and what that does is it keeps the paint in place more. The paint doesn't sort of spread out quite as multi-directional. It keeps it kind of focused where you put it. Not entirely, obviously, but it more so than this does. And the reason for that is this paper has, if you feel the paper, you can feel like all these little indents. That's what the water goes into, is all those little holes take in that water. So, and it also sort of directs the water out a little bit more flowy and loosely. So that's just something I thought I would throw out. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is the watercolor paper that I used. You can get it at Michael's. Artist Loft is their brand name for, you know, generic stuff, from brushes to, which I wouldn't recommend their brushes. They're garbage. To their watercolor, which is really nice. It's pigmented. It is super good quality for a budget watercolor paint. It's really nice. So this one is 140 pounds. It is block, but it does come up pretty easy. So, you know, some block ones you have to use a knife to get them up. Those are the better quality ones. But and there's a little thing here showing, you know, what it's best for and what paper is best for what. It's really helpful, actually, if you're learning. So this paper does not have a smooth side and a rough side. A lot of papers do. I was really kind of shocked. I was looking for the smoother side and it doesn't have it. So let's get that tape on. And I just kind of measure it out. Okay, so I'm going to get this tape on and I'll be back. Okay, so I'm back. Now, one thing when you're putting your tape down, make sure that you seal it, the tape and the paper, that little crease. Make sure you run your finger along that and seal that like that. And make sure that the edge that's on the paper is totally down either. I didn't do that, and it was a devastating mistake that I did not recover from. So just make sure you have everything is all right and tight. There. Excuse me, my gosh, I don't know what's going on with my throat today, but I got all kinds of stuff in it. Okay, so first of all, what we're gonna do, and make sure you have a couple of clean rags. They're clean, they're just stained. It can be little washcloths, it can be, you know, whatever, but I highly recommend something like this instead of paper towel because it's just more environmentally friendly. So, having said that, I'm gonna put that aside now. I have some paints and brushes here. I'm gonna pull these out and show you what I may use any or all of these. I haven't decided, you know, all the ones I'm going to use, but I have a selection to choose from. Now, there's two types of watercolor paint. You can use the pan and the tube. And, you know, pans are good for small little projects, you know, nothing big like this. To me, they're a little harder to work with when you are using the larger projects. That's just my personal opinion. So I have, and I may not use all of these, but I have them out just in case I decide to. So I have olive green by Master's Touch, which is Hobby Lobby's generic. They're pretty nice. They tend to have a lot of fillers, which most generic paints do, unfortunately. So I also have Van Dyke Brown, Ivory Black, and there's a difference. Ivory Black is warmer than Lamp Black. Lamp Black is a little bit cooler to me. So, and then Deep Green, Primary Yellow. Sorry, I was having a tough time reading the words. Vermilion. These over here. Here we go. Burnt Umber. There we go. Ultramarine. Cream. And honest to God, this color, I could not find it in anything else. The closest I could find to it was Buff Titanium. that was the closest match I could find. And I believe buff titanium, I think is Winsor Newton, but don't quote me. I forget. I'd have to look it up. I know that it's very hard to find, but with this one company, it might even be trademarked to them. I'm not 100% certain. Orange, and this is Daler Rowney. I'm sorry. They are a generic set of paints that I actually picked up at Walmart. Michaels sells them. They're very inexpensive, and for the price, they're really decent. I think I bought a set of 40 for like $11. Really cheap. And they're pretty nice. I mean, they're not, Winsor Newton, but so that's why I know a lot of you have budget watercolors and pencils, so I thought I would use the same so that you can get an idea of maybe how they function. I would not recommend Reeves, though, to be honest. I think it's a step down from these, and these are good but not great. I personally would not recommend them. Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you what that was. My bad. Hold up. I believe this is sap green. Sorry. And then we have yellow ochre, which is an amazing color. Okay, so I'm going to put all these back in here because it's handy for keeping them going all over the place. Now, the brushes I'm considering using, I'm going to show you. Whoa. Okay, so we have Daler and Rowney, which is the maker of most of the paints I'm using. This is what they call an oval wash. And you can see that it's not straight. It's kind of how it curves. That's the oval part. It curves into like a nice oval, but it's sort of large and absorbent. These are fantastic for doing large areas like this, or maybe a background, for example. And they come wash brushes come in a variety of shapes. This is just one type. So now this is one of my favorite brushes. It's part of a set that I got for like $60 on sale, so it was a little bit, but it comes in this case, and it's by, I can't pronounce the letters, but there it is. Nice little zipper case. And the ones on this side are different because they're quill brushes, which is why they're attached differently. And these are just regular, like flat. There's another flat. I think this is a mop. It doesn't say, but yeah, it's pretty nice, right? So anyway, there's that. I love this brush so much. It's amazing. Okay, let's see. We have a Winsor Newton 2 rigger. Hopefully you can see that. And that's the rigger. It's the shape of it. It's long and thin, but it's still sort of rounded a little bit. Okay, that's what a rigger brush looks like. They're a nice detail brush. Now here's the mop brush, or is it mop brush? Yeah. That I'm going to be using to wet this down. Mop brushes come in many styles. For example, this is a mop brush, and so is this. But the thing that gives them away is their rounded, thick-bellied shape. That's what makes them the mop brush. So I have two more. This is I think it's a 0. Hold on. Yeah, this is what a 0 detail brush, round brush looks like. It is a 0. Whoops, sorry. This is what a 0 sized round looks like. But it's what I call it's a detail brush. But it's a round. It's the smallest they make, I think. And then we have my snap brush, which is a size 4. I love my snap brushes. My Princeton snap. These are great. Princeton snap brushes are great because they hold a little more water and they just kind of snap back. They're really fantastic for doing detail. So, and if you're wondering why I don't have any refillable watercolor brushes, I don't really care for them too much. They're very hard to control the water. I know a lot of streamers use them when they're doing stuff on stream. I've had a lot of issues when I'm using the refillable brushes in my worlds within worlds, and those kinds of books, the Johanna Bashford books. I have a problem when I use those kinds of brushes of the paint bleeding through to the other side. It tends to come out in gushes for me. I don't, on something like this it'd be fine because it has the there's nothing on the other side of it. It's my own watercolor paper. So but I'm not a big fan of them. So let's get the water in. I'm going to do a speed portion. This in a speed portion. I cannot speak today. I'm going to do this in a speed portion because it will take a minute, and then I will be back. Okay, so I'm back. Now, first of all, what we're going to do, oh, I'm going to add one more thing. You can add some drawing gum, and they have a special tool which I showed in a previous video with Magnolia by Monya Gates. I demonstrate how to put this, apply it. One of the ways you can apply it. There's a lot you can do with this sort of stuff. So you can put some around the edge if you want to make sure that it doesn't bleed into the edge. In this case, I don't care, but I also got some paint on that. Oh well. So the first thing that I'm going to do is show you guys how to use, one of the ways you can use a mop brush. So I'm going to dip this in the water. Hopefully you guys can see my water thing. I'm also going to demonstrate how to sort of carefully make sure you don't have too much water on your brush. But first of all, I'm going to show you the different parts of the brush. Okay, so this part is called the belly. We have the belly, we have the tip, the head, the ferrule. That's where the brush meets the metal. That part is called the ferrule. And that's very important because the ferrule is what holds the brush pieces into the little metal thing here. So moving up, we have what is called the crimp, and then obviously the handle. So I didn't know all these things in the beginning, and I wish somebody had told me sooner. It would have helped me out with a lot of things if I had known some of that. So what you want to do is, I'm going to get some water on this little thing of mine, because my water container is just too big to fit onto the screen entirely. So I'm going to demonstrate with this since it's a little easier. So I'm going to put this down here, and I have some water in these two spaces. So now what you want to do is, okay, that spot has the water in it. Okay, so you want to take your brush, and sometimes you will want to take your brush and just dip it directly into the paint. That's called dry brush painting. Okay, but in this case I don't want to do that. I'm creating some water. I'm going to show you a wet, basically a wet on wet. So you just dip it in the water and find a dry spot. If it was in my other container, I would be doing it off the side of it, and you just hold it there and then bring it up. Okay, this is really important. I'm going to show you again. Start at the ferrule, go up or down the brush, sorry. Hold it there for just a couple seconds and then finish it out. And you see all that water that came off of it? All that water would have been in that brush. And there are times where you might not want that much water. In this case, I kind of do, but not quite that much. If you were to just dip it into the water and go straight onto your page, you would probably end up with way too much water. Unless you were maybe doing a background or something like that. I really recommend just going like this. I wish somebody had shown me this so much sooner than I learned it. Because think about it, if you have you've dipped your thing into the water, and all that water that is in the belly and the head of the brush right here, all that water, and up here too in the ferrule, all that water is going to drip down your brush and right onto your artwork. So it is really, really important to control your water. And it's far much easier, I should say, it's far easier to do it with a brush like this than it is one of those refillable brushes. Once you get the hang of it, it's way easier. So in this case, I do want a little bit more water, but not a lot. So I'm going to just do that again. And you can do it when there's paint on it, especially when there's paint on it. My goodness. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to put this out of the way, is I'm going to start on the, what am I going to start with? I think I'm going to start on the pumpkin because the pumpkin is a little bit bigger. So what I want to do with my brush, and I think I'm going to get a little more water to it. There. Okay. Is you take your brush, and because I have the Micron water resistant pens, you see that it doesn't bleed. And make sure you take your water and keep it within the lines, the outer edges. Wherever you apply that paint is where the water's going to go. So it's really important, especially if you don't have drawing gum down, to make sure that you stay within the lines of where you want the paint to go. Now, if you can see, hopefully, where you see the light reflecting off of it, that's how you can tell if you don't have enough or if you have too much. That shine is what you're looking for, okay? So now that I've done that, I'm going to take my favorite quill brush. Isn't that amazing? Look at that. Ah, it's so awesome. And I'm going to move that out of the way. I'm going to take, and surprisingly, I'm not going to start with what you might think. I'm going to start with my ultramarine. And you want to make sure that, you take your brush, dip it in your paint, which has water added to it. You cannot add it, but it'll be super thick, and I wouldn't recommend it. but you just dip it in the paint, and you can do it right where it's at, or you can do it in a different area. And for purposes of it being seen a little bit better by you guys, I'm going to now just hold it right about at the belly, just hold and then drag. Still too much, so hold, drag. The more paint you leave on there, the more you're going to obviously have on your picture. So you got to think about the area that you're doing, and also bear in mind, keep a track of your picture here, because it's starting to dry a little bit. So you can tell because the shine is going away. So if that happens, don't flip out. Just take one of your brushes, and this is a another mop type brush. Grab your water, drag the water, because you don't want all this. Holds a lot of water. Mop brushes hold a lot of water. And just to add, that synthetic does not hold as much water as animal hair. This is squirrel, and you know, I know some people like, oh, it's animal hair, there's, you know, yada yada. You do your research, and some do the harvesting humanely, where, you know, they get the hair out without hurting them and or killing them. It can be done. Not all companies do it humanely, so you need to do your research. But just because it's animal does not mean it's automatically out. I did my research, and they don't do it in a way that I find objectionable. And if your brushes on the real hair kind of flatten out, you know, not flatten, geez, splay out like that, don't freak out. It's okay. That's animal. Animal does. It does that. It's okay. So I'm going to dip it back in here because it dried a little. Oh, oops, I almost forgot what I was doing. Sorry. Okay, I gotta re-wet this because it started to dry. Now you don't want too much, but you want it to dry. Now I really should have just gotten the darker areas wet, thinking about it, but that's okay. I'm just going to do the whole thing this way, and you'll see why in a minute. So I'm just going to use this mop brush. It's funny, right? They can be so different. Like, some are longer, some are shorter, you know, but yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, make sure you don't have too much water at a time. Just, you know, hold and drag. You want water, but you don't want it just running everywhere, okay? And I don't want the eyes to be, you know, anything funky, so I want to keep the water out of the eyes. So make sure you don't get water into the eyes in this case, because I don't want them to be part of I want them to be separate. So see, I don't know if you can see from your perspective, but I got a little, because I could tell by the shine where the shine is and where it isn't. It will tell you where the water is. So you really do have to be careful you don't use too much water though, or you can ruin the effect that you're after. And it can also sort of cause the paper to deteriorate a little bit faster. So, and especially when you're not using 100% cotton, which this is not, you really do have to be careful, because the water will sit on top of the paper, and it takes a little bit longer for pulp mold made watercolor paper to absorb the water. It takes a little bit longer, you know, just a few seconds, but you know, for somebody who maybe is a professional artist, or needs a lot of layers, I would recommend 100% cotton. It can be very expensive, I'm not gonna lie, but you, jeez, sorry, I got something where I didn't want it. It can be expensive depending on the brand, but you can get it relatively inexpensive, not budget friendly per se, but you just have to shop around, look for deals, you know, that kind of thing. And I'm going back over these just to make sure. Now, when you have it taped down like this, don't worry if it starts buckling a little. That's normal, okay? It will flatten down as it dries, okay? And the other thing you have to remember is that watercolor dries lighter than when you put it on, and it sometimes can change colors entirely depending on how concentrated the watercolor is that you put down. Like if it's really diluted with a lot of water, then you're going to get a much lighter effect, and I have had it like completely change colors on me, almost. And I'm grabbing some of the ultramarine here and I'm putting it in my little daisy thing here. I highly recommend both of these, they're awesome. And I'm going to basically just do that, and see, it puts it right back into the well, so you can save it. Now I'm going to take my brush and just go over it like that. I don't want a super heavy layer. That's why I'm taking it from here and putting it over to here, getting off the excess water, or not water, paint, and then I'm adding extra water to it. So I want it diluted, because I want it to be in the form of a wash. The less water, the more opaque it's going to look. At least at first. It might dry more transparent depending on the paint color and the manufacturer. But I don't want it to be super heavy. So I know you're thinking, blue on a pumpkin? What are you doing? You'll see. I learned this trick from Emma. She is a Canadian watercolorist. That she is phenomenal. Now I can tell that some of this paint has started to dry already on me by the way that it's not spreading. And that's okay. I don't need it super wet anyway. But just know that if you're doing a wet on wet, which is what I'm going to be doing in a bit, some paints dry faster than others, and depending on how much paint you apply, it can take longer. And I don't want to color his mouth. But it's warm out today, so the water is drying very quickly. Unfortunately, it's very warm outside for freaking October. It's like Indian summer is a thing here where I live. It really is, and it's been quite warm, except for at night. I've turned my heater on at night, and then by day I have the AC on. How messed up is that, right? So yeah. See, now I did this one a little thicker unintentionally, but I kind of like that because it's the shadow area. I'm just doing a simple front shadow light. I'm not doing anything to the side or anything weird like that. But you do have to work quickly when you're doing a wash like this, in this way, because I want it nice and soft. You do have to work quickly. Oh, and if you get something on your thing here, don't freak out. Just rinse it out and you're good. And it's not good. It's down here now. Jeez. Hold on. Okay, there it is. All right. And I'm going at it again a second time on the bottom. Here, let me do this up. Let me make sure you guys can see. Okay, cool. I'm going back over this a little bit more because I want more. And you don't want to push really hard with these brushes. You can ruin them that way. It's pretend like you are holding on to a feather. If you push too hard with the feather, you're gonna break it, collapse it, and do all things bad to it. So but you see how the micro pen marker is not smearing in the least. You do need to let it dry. It only takes a few minutes, but you do need to let it dry. Sorry, if I go quiet, it's just because I'm concentrating. It's like trying to talk and chew gum. I don't know how people that do lives, I don't know how they do it. It's like trying to talk and chew gum at the same time. Now see, I can tell the paint is definitely starting to dry in the water. It's definitely starting to dry. By the way, it's staying in place. But it's so warm today that it's not giving me a chance to get it all done before it starts to dry on me. And I'm going to go a little harder with it, as I said, in the shadow area. So what I'm going to do is get some more water in here. Whoops. And then I'm going to go in here. Make sure you not rinse. Well, I cannot talk today. Make sure you kind of scrape off some of the water and paint, especially if you're doing a smaller area. Okay, now I'm going to go back in. There's some of the darker areas. And you see how I'm just sort of using the tip to push the water around? When you're doing tiny areas, that's why a brush like this is great. It's a quill brush, but it's also round. I believe it, yeah, it's a size 4. So that just goes to show you that not all brush sizes are equal. Dude, like, hold on. Okay, so this is a size 4. Oh, there we go. Okay. This is a size 4. So sometimes you can't always go by the number. You have to actually look at the brush itself. And this is, as I said, starting to dry a bit, and that's okay. Use your brush. Now watch what I do, okay? Just very lightly, just kind of flick. You know how you flick with the pencil? This is kind of how you do this with a brush like this. I highly recommend getting these brushes. They are a phenomenal things. They hold water and paint so much more. They're phenomenal brushes. I highly recommend investing them. They do go on sale sometimes, so just okay, that's a little too much. So say, like right here, I've got too much paint. I'm going to rinse my brush out in my other container. I'm going to dry it with a little towel here, and watch this. Ta-da! If you get too much paint in an area, you have to get it before it dries, though. Okay, see, like over there, it's too dry, and it'll hurt the paper. So I got to go back in and just fix it. It will hurt the paper. Shoot, now I messed it up. Hold on, guys. I gotta fix this. I messed it up a little. Yeah, that's why you should never do it when it's dry. like that. When you've already painted over it. Ugh, I gotta fix this, guys. I sort of messed it up. Okay. Okay, there we go. But yeah, if you get too much paint, you gotta do it though before it dries, because you saw what happened over there. It messed up the paper a little bit. So, having said that, I'm gonna go back in over to my shadow areas. And don't worry if this is turning the orange. I just traced it with the orange because that's going to be the general color of the pumpkin. So, wow, sorry about that, guys. I live near an airport, one of the busiest on the East Coast, the Baltimore, Washington area. It's very busy. It's a lot. So I'm going to also go under here, any area where I want a shadow. And it's okay that I did this after it dried a little bit because I want it to kind of stay put. I don't want it to just flow everywhere. Now I'm going to show you something in a second. Okay. You see how the paint went into the eye a little bit? I might have time to fix that because it's still a little bit wet. So I'm going to rinse my brush out really good. Just kind of do this on your towel. Let's see if I can get it up. Ta-da! And there it is. Gone. Bam. So, and I'm going to go over here a little bit more with my, and to do these shadow areas, what you can do to get it like that the first time if you wanted to, is to dip your paint directly into the color, and it's going to be wet because we've been using it. So I don't need to dip it in the water or anything, and just dip it directly into the paint just a little bit because I'm doing a small area. Drag it just a little bit on your side of your container you got your paint in, just a little bit, and put it directly into the area. And watch out where you see it's like right there next to where that is. That's gonna form a darker spot. So you kind of want to not let that stay. All you got to do is just use your tip and just push the water, the paint soaked water, just push it around a little bit until it goes away. It also helps to just dry your brush off real quick and then go back in, and it will take care of that. You see, I'm just kind of pushing it around a little bit until that darker area kind of spreads out. That's all you got to do. It's really not as hard as you might think. It requires a little patience. So I'm gonna take this and go back up. Be careful if it started to dry. Like you saw what happened over there. Just be very careful and just go in very lightly, as light as you can possibly manage. You see how I'm holding the brush? Almost like you would your pencil. Okay, very farther back. And I'm going in over my shadow areas, and I don't care that this is dried a little bit because I kind of want it to not go everywhere at this point. So, but you want to just kind of smooth it out, and you can take a brush like this, mop brush, and watch this. You can also do this. But only if it's still wet. This will not work if it's dry, okay? Don't forget to rinse out your brush. So, let's get in some of these other areas a little bit more. This is how you're going to get some of your shadows to look nice and deep. Now, I'm not going to drain this one on my thing. I'll show you why. I want it to be super pigmented here. There. Just use that tip. You have to really, again, pretend like you have one of your color pencils, okay? Oh, my water's gone. Okay. And I'm gonna put this in here because I need some more water in there. And you can put more water or paint into the water if you want to. It just really depends on how opaque you want it. And if you see it dimpling, just try to work with it and not fight it, because you're not going to win. Gravity and all, you know, it's a thing. So I'm going to wipe my brush off and just kind of just blend that out a little bit. Ta-da! And I'm going to get some more paint and do it over here. The darker areas, the darkest areas, I'm not draining the paint off, but I'm not just plunging the whole thing in either. I'm just putting in the tip. Just, you don't want to, okay, you don't want to get your paint all the way up to the ferrule. I can personally attest to this. It is a good way to ruin your brush, because the paint then gets up into that ferrule and it can absolutely destroy your paintbrush and cause the bristles to spread out more than what they should, because you know that paint is creating space within the ferrule, you know, where the bristles are attached. So you really don't want to jam it all the way up. If you have a deeper container of paint than that, you don't need to have your brush, your paint, or your brush, I should say, any deeper than here, where my skewer is. It does not ever need to go any deeper than that, ever. Okay? So I'm going to stick this in, and I'm going to get some more shadows in. Your brain just kind of goes to mush. You really do have to sort of pay attention to what you're doing. It's not hard. You just have to pay attention. I got a little on there, so because that's still wet, I'm going to rinse off my brush really good. Wipe it on a paper towel or a rag, and I'm going to get this off. You have to be careful not dig or anything like that, because A, that's a good way to ruin your brush, and B, it will mess with the fibers. Basically, watercolor paper, or any paper really, is just wood fibers from trees or recycled paper that have been compressed into the sheets. That's all it is. So all that is just cotton. And well, in this case it's pulp cotton, but you have to be really careful, because after a time the paper will deteriorate and the holes get full, and so you just really have to kind of watch. Now I've got a little bit more to do down here, I think, and then I should be about done with that. I'm gonna get some more water in here, and I fill up my paint spots very pigmented, like there's more pigment to water, because if I need to add water to it, which I did in this case with the blue, it's not going to end up super washed out. I want it washed out, but not like too washed out in this case. Just a little. And I want a little more water here because it has dried some. So I'm going to need that water to be on my brush since it's not on the paper. I can see where it's already starting to buckle, which is why we tape it down thoroughly. Okay, I think I've gotten all my spots here. So, maybe just a little over there. Okay, so now we're on for our next step. I'm going to rinse my brush out. I will primarily probably be using this brush, but I do have a few others, as I showed you, that I'm going to demonstrate for, purposes of showing you how they work. I needed a drink. So let's take our brush back, and I'm going to let this dry. So if you don't want to let it dry naturally, depending on how warm it is, it could take longer or shorter. I'm going to do this. Ta-da! I have a little blow dryer. So we're going to okay, so now that that's done, and also to add a little side note, if you're using a blow dryer to dry your work, be very, very careful that you don't bake the paper and the paint. I have done this with not only watercolor but my paint pouring. You have to be very careful, because when you bake it, you basically are really messing up the paper fibers. You're causing them to expand fully, and they're going to dry like that, and then your water retention is going to be like 0. So it's just going to slide everywhere. So just be very careful. Just look at the shine to see how shiny it is. Kind of just put your hand on it, and if it's still a little bit cool it's dry, but it's still a little cool to the touch, that means that the paint is still not 100% dry. Like right now, I dried it and it's about 95% dry. There's still a couple of areas where I added a little more paint off camera. It's still a little cool to here, so you might want to give it just a few minutes if that's the case. And while that's drying, I'm going to talk about something. Watercolor is all about layers. Think of it like, how when you have Faber-Castell polychromos pencils, how they're just a lot of light layers, and if you try to color too hard, it just looks like a dark streaky mess. You need lots of light layers. Okay, watercolor in that way is kind of like that. Do you see how around over here I made it even darker? The depth wasn't what I needed, so instead of just adding more colors, I just simply kept adding more layers, and I added at least 2 more layers off camera to some of these areas. That's what gives you your depth a lot of times, especially in watercolors. It's not so much adding just one color after another, but it's just adding layers, and sometimes it's layers of the same paint. You have to be careful too to not add too many layers at once, because what's going to happen, sorry, I'm checking that, it's almost there. What can happen is the paper, then the fibers can become saturated, and the water's just going to go all over the place. And while you might want that, like say if you're doing a wet on wet, which I'm going to show you at some point, it can cause it to pool a lot more than what it might otherwise, because the area will gravitate to the areas that aren't raised up. that are like the valley, and it's going to be attracted to the little holes in the paper. And where those things don't exist, then it's just going to want to, the overflow is just going to go everywhere. So it's a mess. So just be careful how much you add how much paint you add at one time. And I see this is almost dry. Yeah, that's good enough. It seems to be, it's like 98%. It's good enough. So what we're gonna do is this part this tiny part right here. Now, for his eyes, I'm going to add a little bit of water, just a little bit, from my other little paint thing over here, or I could add it from here. Either way. Now, I see over here I got a little bit of blue in the eye, but that's okay. It's not enough to make a difference. So I'm just going to add some water. I did not swipe my brush off to the side. I didn't do that. I just put it directly on because I did not dip my brush in that much. I dipped it in just a little bit. I don't know if you can tell, but just like that much. Just enough that the tip sort of bends just a little. That's all you really need. So I'm gonna do this one. Hope you can see what I'm doing. Sometimes if things go awry while I'm filming, I have nobody to tell me, oh, hey, that's off camera or off screen. I have no one. I cannot afford assistance. I wish. Okay, so there's a little bit of water there, so I'm gonna just get that up. It's dried a little bit because this area is wet. I can kind of get that. Okay, and this side is good. Okay. Now I'm gonna do a mixture of my primary yellow. I think it was primary. Wow. And I'm gonna put it into here. You want to stir it a little first in the paint pot that it's in. Just give it a light stir. Don't push with your brush too hard. Just a little, if that. And do it this. And I'm not really, draining it too much because I kind of want a fair amount. So if you want a little more, paint, then don't drag it. Drag and dry it, as I call it. Now, I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is a sign to me that my paint has gotten a little bit old. I'm going to show you. I'm going to try. Excuse my voice. Okay. I don't know if you can see the orange paint right there. Do you see how it's sort of separating a little bit? Okay, that means that the paint's getting a little bit old. And there's several of them that have done that. If your paints are doing that, they either need to be mixed up, which will sometimes help with paint that's old. Sometimes not. It just depends. In this case, it probably will be fine. But that's one of the risks you run of doing older paint, or I should say older and cheaper. Okay, now I'm going to rinse it. And be careful when you rinse. Don't. If you have a container like this, watch. Just lightly drag it along those ridges that are there, lightly, and that will help clean it. You don't need to, be real aggressive with it or anything. And I'm going to grab some yellow ochre. I have my orange. Let's see. Maybe a little bit more of the yellow. I'm trying to get what the inside. In fact, I just remembered a color that I need. Hold on. Y'all just reminded me. I forgot to grab one of my colors. Be right back. Sorry for the occasional wobbles, by the way. It's just the way I have my stuff set up. Sometimes my swing arm likes to bounce and it drives me absolutely bonkers. So I apologize if I didn't get one of them edited. I try to edit them out, but sometimes I miss a couple. So anyway, we have bright yellow light. I had to get my magnifying glass out. Oh my gosh, I'm just, might be time for new glasses. Anyway, I'm going to get a little bit of this, and also I'm going to stress that with the budget paints, you really want to shake them up, or just kind of make sure the lid's on good and just kind of squeeze them like this and give them a couple shakes. They have a lot more filler in them than the higher end paints that are better quality. There's a lot more filler, and that filler, if you're not careful, when you open up your paint, this weird liquid is going to come out. And I didn't know what it was the first time it happened to me. And I had to ask my betters, people that know are like professional watercolor artists, which I'm not. I had to ask. I was like, what in the world? And they said it's the filler. And so cheap supplies, while being of a decent quality, one of the drawbacks is that they have more filler. Okay, so just kind of give it a good shake before you open it to get around that. And I'm going to put it over here. Hopefully you can see. And see, there's that liquid. I don't know if you guys saw that, but I didn't mix it up good enough. And that clear stuff that you saw, hopefully you saw come out. I don't know if you could, the camera will pick it up, but that's the filler. And the filler can look different for each brand. Oh, one other thing I'm going to stress to you, never leave your brushes sitting in the water. It will destroy them over time. You'll go through your brushes much quicker because it damages the bristles. And I just did that. So don't do that. Okay. I forget once in a while. I'm, not perfect, but try your best not to do that. It will ruin them. Okay. So just a little side note, give it a good shake. Come on. All right. And I'm going to get a Q-tip, and I'm going to get the part that came out because it's all filler and it just is going to be messed up. So let's get this in here. And I don't need a lot. Ugh, come on, you. And this is by Master's Touch, which is, like I said, it's Hobby's kind of generic, like Artist Loft is to Michael's. Master's Touch is to Hobby Lobby. So, and keep an eye on your water, okay? Because remember I was talking about in the beginning about having 2 jars of water? Do you see how this side is much dirtier than that side? Because I rinse my brush initially. My first rinse is in this side. It can be on the other side for you. It doesn't have to be. Then I kind of do this. And then I rinse it on the other side. And then I do that again. Okay? It's really, really important, but you still need to keep an eye on the water because it can get too dirty. And then you won't get the true colors of, it will mess with your color quite a bit. So just keep an eye on your paint. And let's get this diluted. Oh, I think I put too much in, geez. So if that happens, just get to the paint pot near it and just spread it out a little. That's what I do. Or you can rinse it off in your thing. I hate to waste the paint. So let's see what this light yellow does. Light yellow. Yeah, bright yellow light. Ugh. I really can't speak today. See, there it is. It kind of also reminds me of Naples ochre a little bit, light Naples ochre. It reminds me, but that's perfect. I only needed a little bit, and there it is. So I'm going to mix a little bit more of this because I like it. Oh, do you see how that paint did that? how it kind of just bloomed out like that? That's a little bit like what a wet on wet technique looks like. So I'm gonna wipe my paintbrush off, and before I dip it into the yellow, oh, I need more yellow. Oh, so I just realized I need more yellow. I just used all of my yellow. It happens. And I'm gonna get more of this. And another good reason to, if it's a color you're going to use a lot of, to use two paint pots like that, is so you can dip into one, and if it gets mixed up, it doesn't matter, and you still have your pure side. So this is the side I'll dip back into, and I'll probably strain my brush into, and that side I'll leave alone. See? Ta-da! And just use the belly of and or the head of your brush to just kind of lightly. You don't want to push with your brush. You just gentle, like you're holding a, like you're touching a feather to the surface. Just very lightly. Okay. And that's too dark, so I need more of this. I'm gonna get more there. I'm dipping a little more into there, but I also my brush wasn't too dirty, so that should be more than enough. What do you think? Doesn't that look like the inside of a melon or a pumpkin? It's pretty close, right? You have to bear in mind, as I said earlier, paints do dry lighter. So this is a little bit dark, but it will dry a little bit lighter than it's shown here. Paint really does change color. And in fact, I think I'm going to put some of this up here too, especially on the end. So for the eyes, I might grab my smaller brush. Yeah, I'm going to grab my smaller. Oh, that's too small. Hold on. There, this is also called a pointed filbert. Oops. Ooh, sorry. This is what they call a pointed filbert. Filberts, hold on, let me put my brush down. Filberts can come one of two ways. They can come pointed like this or rounded at the end. Okay? This one happens to be pointed. This one will be excellent for this, both in terms of its thickness. This will work too, but I wanted to show you this other brush. So I'm gonna rinse my other brush out, and try to keep your brushes rinsed because when paint, if it's allowed to dry, it can sort of damage the bristles. And try to keep the paint away from the ferrule. Now I'm going to have to wet this again because it was allowed to dry. So let me get my water. And I'm getting in from the clearest side of my water, not the dirtier side. So you might see a little color, but it's okay. But I got to re-wet it because it dried. Just look and see. Look for the shine and the sheen, and that'll tell you how dry it is without ever having to touch it. Dude, I love this song. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's really pretty. Okay. Ooh, let's get that moved over. Okay. You can either do this to get some of the excess off, or you can just drag it. Okay. I'm gonna have to push that out of my way. Okay. There we go. All right. Once again, to be careful to lay down your initial clear water. Make sure you stay within the area that you want the paint to go if you don't have masking fluid up on it, which by the way is a blast to take off. I also demonstrated that in one of my last two videos. I forget which one off the top of my head, but I do demonstrate how to take it off and a little bit how to put it on. So please check that out, and if you have not considered liking and subscribing and tinkling all the bells around it, I would very much appreciate that. It'll help my channel grow and reach more people, and it helps me a lot. So I would really appreciate that. And feel free to browse around my site for other videos. I do speed colors, reviews, product reviews, demonstrations like this one. Sometimes I don't really talk, but yeah, I got a lot of stuff, a lot of different stuff, from painting, watercolor to pencils. I'm not really a great freehand artist, which is why I traced this image. That is a work in progress. I'm learning, so I'll get there, but I'm not good enough to draw something like this yet. So that is going to take me a bit of time, and I think I've got way more paint than I need, but that's okay. Sometimes, depending on the size of space that you're coloring, you know, a little can go a long ways. Now this, I don't know if you can tell, but hopefully you can. Right in here, it's a little pulled in a couple places, so you want to just take the tip of your brush and just gently move it around, not too hard. It's as light as you possibly can without taking the paint off too much. And just kind of gently push it around to where it evens out. It's really important to do that unless you want it to be patchy like that. And maybe that's the effect that you're going for. And what you're going to do with this is let that dry. And in the meantime, I think that I'm going to put in while that's drying, I'm going to put a little bit of this up here because I really like this color. It was bright yellow light. Let's see, where's my paints? It was this, which is primer yellow, and then the yellow ochre. I like it. It's a little heavy on the bright yellow light. Oh, for the love of God, I cannot say those words. Anyway, I'm gonna pull this down, and I'm going to do a little bit up here. This will be great for the highlighted areas. Now, the thing that you have to be careful of, because I'm going to use a little bit of green in the stem. The green and the yellow can mix, but cannot. So here, I'll use this. I'll use this thing actually. While that's drying, I'm going to use this, and I'll show you. So I'm going to take a little bit of this mixture, drain my brush off, and you don't need to push really hard, by the way, just gentle, okay? Just very gently, okay? Very gently. Be careful though, you don't flick the paint into your nearby thing if you've got paint in it, because that can be a mess. All right, so I'm going to take that though, and I'm going to find one of my greens. Let's see. I'm going to go for the warmer green. Okay. And I'm going to mix a little in. It can go, but it cannot. You have to be very cautious. I picked a warm green because the yellow is warm. So it's really important when you're messing around with colors like this. If all of this was overall cool toned, then I would have picked a cool green. It's really important to keep that consistency, because sometimes when you go warm with a cool, you can get a real odd, it doesn't always go very well. So you're better off and safer just to, stick with the warm to the warm. And as you could tell, this actually looks pretty good. Whoa. Okay. So I'm going to pull this over here and I'm going to show you guys. Okay, yes, this is sap green. Oh, that makes perfect sense. So if you add just a little bit, and you don't want to add too much because your sap green will overpower the light yellow. Okay, it just will. It's just the nature of the yellows that I used and the nature of the pigments that make up the sap green. The green will overtake it if you're not careful, and I'll show you what I mean. I'm gonna add too much on purpose. Now if you want the yellow to be an undertone, like this blue is an undertone, okay, it's like a underpainting is what they call it. Okay, this is my underpainting. As you can see, the yellow, hopefully you can see, you can barely see the yellow, which is what makes it an undertone. It's not the primary dominant color. Now, if I rinse my brush out and I grab some more of this yellow, because I put way too much in the pot, that yellow will again either become the dominant color or it will just mix in evenly depending on how much extra you add. Now see, I added too much yellow and look, it's kind of a weird mess. So, if I'm being honest. So I'm gonna grab a little more of that yellow and I'm gonna add some more yellow back in. And you just play around with it like that, making sure to kind of clean or wipe off your brush in between dips into other pots, because otherwise it just ends up being muddy, and you also end up muddying the paint in the pots. So what can I add to that to make it oh I wanted to show you something. I know I'm rambling a little, but I have to show you something. Okay, so do you see how the paint has collected in the center of that? Hopefully you can tell. Do you see how it's collected in the very center? Part of that's just the way that the paint pot is. It's kind of scooped. But part of that is because of the granulating colors that I used. Yellow ochre and sap green are both if I'm not mistaken, are granulating. The earth tones, the warmer colors, a lot of them, the pigments tend to be very granulating. Not all, but a good share of them tend to be granulating. So if you're wondering, is this color granulating? Yes. You just look at how does it move around afterwards like that and just kind of shift. That tells you right there that it's granulating. Okay. And granulating means just the paint moves a little bit differently than in paints that are like, say, staining, which your ultramarine is staining, which is one of the reasons why I used it as my underpainting. A lot of your blues and your cooler reds tend to be very staining, your cool colors in general. So that's just food for thought. I know that's a side subject, but it's kind of an important thing. So I actually kind of like that, but I think I want to add in a little bit of, oh man, that's separated, geez. I'm going to add in just a pinch of, let me make sure the paint that I used, burnt umber. Because see how reddish it is? That means it's a burnt something or other. And the burnt sienna would just be a little bit lighter. But that's my okay, so I was wrong. I take back what I said. This is burnt sienna. Sorry. The burnt umber is more of a brownish. It's still, you can tell that it's burnt because it's still, and the burnt umber is over there. But the burnt umber leans more toward the brown side, whereas the burnt sienna obviously leans more to the reddish side, because brown sienna is very reddish. So that's just food for thought, but I was mixing that up because it had settled If it's, as I said, if it's old or if it hasn't been mixed up good enough. And it can also be harder to mix when the paint's old. Or if it's like a super budgety pencil with paint, which this is, it can be a little harder to mix up. So I just want a little, like I'm not even gonna, I dipped that in too deep. Just a little. Come on, you, there. Okay, I'm gonna mix that out. And I'm also gonna grab a little bit of, let's see what it is. I think my Van Dyke Brown. Which is, I think, what this is. Let's test it out over here. I think that's my burr number. Yeah, that's my burr number. This should be my Van Dyke Brown. Yeah, because it doesn't have that reddish tint to it. Just gonna add a little bit of that in. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. You know, thinking about it, I'm kind of painting this on the fly a little bit. This color would be great for in the shadow areas, but less of the green. Maybe just a way less of the green. I think that would be really great. So I like that. It has this yellow mixture. It has some Van Dyke Brown and a little burnt sienna, and the green, little bit of the sap green. I like this. So let's push this out of the way. And I'm not wetting the paper first. This is paint. This is dry. Dry. The brush isn't dry, so it's not dry brush painting. But I haven't put any water down like I did on the pumpkin, because I want the water to stay put. I don't want it to blend. And that's going to be kind of a highlighted area maybe. So let's grab a little more of that and just take note of how I drain the brush. Okay. And I'm going to do another area. And this is going to be a shadow, I think. So I'm going to just a little bit here. So let's grab, let's see. Let's mix a little in here. I'm going to take a little of my cream. Honestly, I could not, as I said earlier, I could not find this anywhere except in this set. Like I said, buff titanium might be the closest mix to it that I can come up with. I'm going to add some of that, and let's see. I'm going to do a little yellow ochre. So, wait a minute. I just want to make sure what I was telling you. Okay, let's get this. And I think I'm going to add a little bit of black, and you're thinking, oh my Lord, what is she doing? Just a little. Like, I'm barely, got to rinse my brush out, but I'm barely sticking just a tad. Just a little will go a long way here. You might not even notice it right off. Oh my God, I'm sorry. My neighbor's dog's barking. I'm so sorry. Just a little. Make sure your brush isn't just fully saturated with the other paint, or you're gonna, because what this does is just a little bit, it darkens it. And I'm also gonna add in a little my Van Dyke Brown. Whoops, a little too much there, but that's okay. And this will add in your depth. Just a pinch, just a little. See, that's more than enough. See, you notice that I wiped my brush off immediately. That's more than enough. Okay, so I'm gonna add This is probably not the ideal brush for this particular application, but it's okay. Yeah, I can make it work. And if it doesn't look like exactly like what you want at first, don't freak out. You know, it's just about the layers. Just like when you're doing pencil. You're going to go through an ugly phase. I think I'm going to add a little burnt umber too. Just a little. Now, oh my gosh, there it is. That's what I was looking for. Okay, I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up. Oh, hopefully it can. Make sure I stick it in here. I don't know if the camera's picking that up, but can you see the granules in the paint? I hope you can. That's also an indication of whether you have granulating paint. You'll physically see the granules, and plus it will move around a lot more and in different ways. But I want this even more, so I'm actually going to add a little bit more even, because I want it even darker. Oh, whoa, too much. Jeez. Dang it, too much. Actually, no, I take that back. Okay, this is, at first I was like, oh, this is too much, but no, it's not. And I know it looks a little, ugh, but watch, you'll see. When it dries, you'll see. Now this is wet on wet. This is what wet on wet looks like. Do you see how it's kind of like spilling out a little bit? It's sort of bleeding out. That's wet on wet. You have to be very careful when using wet on wet. This is almost like a dark olive. I like it. You have to be very careful because it can really move. That's wet on wet to some extent. Okay, that's pretty good. That was a happy accident, yo. That was a happy accident. So, I added in the yellow ochre, burnt umber, a little bit of black, just a little, and man, it's pretty good. I like that. So that's going to be excellent shadow area for this too. So now this area has had a chance to dry. So I'm going to rinse my brush off, and I'm going to rinse it off in here so it'll make sure that it doesn't go dry on me. Take your bigger brush, which I'm actually going to switch to. Drain your water. All right. I just counted three or four. Oh, shoot. I did a dumb. Wow. Hold up. I did a dumb. Forgot to wet my... You can do this, by the way, as long as you do it lightly. Re-wet the area after it's had a chance to dry. Just re-wet it. Make sure you have a clean brush. Or at least mostly clean. And don't go over it too many times, or you'll take the paint up. Okay, so I'm gonna go like this. I'm just going in little strokes and circles depending on where I'm at. You know how you do little squiggles when you're using pencils? It's a little bit like that. Especially when you have a pointed brush like this, which is a round. You see how it's sort of bleeding? When I touch it down, it sort of bleeds out. That's wet on wet. There's water that needs to be cleaned, drained and whatnot. Okay, so I'm going to get my little yellow mixture from in there, and I'm going to go back over some of these areas. Oops, let me get this down. Just lightly trying to blend those seams. You have to be careful not to go over it too many times or dig, because it can really wreck your paper. All right, let's go back into this other spot too. Oh, wait, let's make sure this is dry. It's dry enough, yeah. Always check. Unless you want them to really bleed together, like completely. I'm gonna go back over that. Oh shoot, there we go, accident. This is why you keep a clean brush handy. Watch. I'm gonna fix this. That might be the wrong brush for that. Hold on. You have to get it when it's dry, though. Okay, I didn't dry my brush off good enough. That's why I did that. Yep, that's why I did that. I forgot to do that stop and drop with my paintbrush. So it decided it was gonna get me back. Now I'm gonna get a little of my burnt umber mixed here, just a little. I'm gonna make sure I move it over to the side. If you do something like that, just move it over to the side. Drain it. Especially brushes that hold a lot like squirrel hair does. You really have to be careful. And I think I'm going to do a little Van Dyke brown here too. Oh, it's not dark enough. Okay, I guess I'm going to have to go for the black. Be very careful when you're playing with things together like this. It can go very wrong. If it does that, don't freak out. It is fixable to a point. Yeah. I'll grab a little of this other mixture. Not too much, you just need a little. Like a little goes a long way. If I could just say one thing, a little, I've gone through paint so much faster than I needed to because I made up too much paint, which I still sometimes do, or I just put in too much of the pigment from the tube, and man, I had so much paint by the time I thinned it down enough, it was kind of ridiculous. Yeah, maybe I should have stuck with that filbert brush, I think. Now, I showed you what my rigger brush looked like. I could have used some of those for some of my lines here, but oh, I forgot the nose, man. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but here I just kind of used the very tip to just tap the water in, just lightly tap it in. That's all you need. So now you see I have dimension already, but I do need to get in that shadow a little bit more than before. So I'm going to grab what's left of my yellow, my bright yellow, primary yellow, and I'm going to mix it in because it needs to be very light. And notice, have I used any white whatsoever? Nope, not a bit. Sometimes white is okay for certain things, but really your best way is to just layers. It's just layers. And just keep layering it up. And sometimes, like I said earlier, with the same thing, you know, that's all it is. You don't always need to use white or black. But I'm gonna get, there we go. And this is definitely still wet on wet here. You see how I'm pushing the paint around? And I'm just kind of push it around so that it kind of blends with the other spots. See how that blends? I'm going to push it up in here just a little. Man, I love this. And you can add some lighter here, especially because it's still wet on wet. You can add a little bit of light, but just be careful because, you know, the area is already a mix of different colors, so it can kind of cause some muddiness. Yeah, I'm gonna add this in here. It's dried. I want it to bleed, so if you can tell the shine, let's see, I don't know if you could tell. There, you see the shine? That tells me where the water is. So I'm going to drain this a little bit because I don't want too much. Remember, stop, drag, and pick it up. Okay? I don't want too much. I don't want to over. That's why that bled into there, because I forgot to do that. Now I'm going to wipe my brush off and repeat. There you go. Wet on wet is really good for if you want a soft, fluffy appearance. You want things to be just kind of loose and soft and feathery. Wet on wet is your best bet. Oh, I almost forgot, dude. And you notice I just dropped that in. I didn't just put it in. I just carefully dropped it in. I don't want it to expand too far out into the other area, so because the paint's got to go somewhere. After the area has absorbed all it can take, it's gonna just find other areas to go where it can. Oh, that's kind of how salt works, but that's another subject for another day. All right, so this is part 1. I think, and the pumpkin is going to be part 2. This base of it's going to be part 2 because I don't want this to go too long, and I'll do a background too, I think, for you guys. So this is part 1. I hope you'll stay tuned for part 2. I should have it out in a few days. I really hope you enjoyed this. I hope that you found it worth your time, because I know everybody's time is important. And as I said, please consider liking and subscribing if you are enjoying my content. I do my best. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, and I still have a lot to learn, but I know a lot too. And it's fun for me to show you guys what I have learned, so that maybe I can save somebody else some grief, because I frequently had to learn the hard way for a lot of things. So I'm just trying to save y'all some grief, just tell you what I know that made things easier for me. So stay tuned for part 2, guys. Bye.